So we got one other thing we got to add to this unit, and that's actually going to be systems of inequalities. But before we really get into the systems of inequalities, we got to be able to just work with inequality graphs. So previously, when you've had inequality graphs, you've had like a number line, and then it'd be either an open or closed circle and an arrow pointing one way or the other, right? Y'all remember doing those other years? Anybody remember which one's open or which one's closed for the circles? Alexandra? Yeah, the ones without the line, those are the ones that are open or that have been open previous years. The ones with the line underneath, those are the filled in circles. Okay? We're not using those. We are doing something similar. We're graphing them like linear functions. Okay? When we do our lines, the ones that had an open circle, that they don't have a line under them, those are going to be dotted lines. So fill this in on your sheet. The ones with a line underneath, those are going to be these solid lines. And the big difference between them is what a dot on the line means. So if there's a dot on the line or a point on the line for either one of those, if it's a dotted line and the point's on the line, it is not a solution. If it's a solid line with a point on the line, it is a solution. So that's the biggest difference between whether it's dotted or solid. It's when it's less than versus less than or equal to. If it's less than 4, 4 is not a solution. If it's less than or equal to 4, 4 is a solution. It's the same type idea with that. Okay? Everybody with me on that so far? So we're going to graph them like linear functions. They're going to have dotted or solid lines. They're also going to be shaded. What that means is it's going to be colored in basically either above or below. So by above, if I've got a line like this, that means I can have some shading up here. And, if you see it on a graph, it'll be colored in better than that, obviously. And if it's shaded below, you're going to have the shading down here. So with above is greater than or equal to. So if you see those, that means you're shading above. If you see shading below, that is either less than or equal to. In this case, since I had a dotted line, it wouldn't have the line under it. It'd just be greater than or less than. Okay? So the inequality sign dictates whether it's above or below. Okay? So what we have here, if we have an inequality graphed, there are basically 4 things we can use to determine an inequality or how the inequality matches a graph. First thing, slope. In this case, my slope is 4. Y-intercept. I got this one. Y-intercept is -3. Then what we're looking at is whether it's a dotted or solid line. This one, we got a line underneath it. That means we're going to have a solid line. Y'all, that's the easiest one to use. All right, if you look at the graph and you see dotted or solid line, sometimes, not always, but sometimes you can eliminate a couple of the answer choices. And then it's whether it's shaded or above or below. What we're looking for is how it interacts with the y. Okay? So since it's chomping the y, we got greater than, that's going to be shaded above. Okay? Not horrible, right? All right, so let's make it a little tougher then. Standard form. So, who can give me the slope? Who can give me the correct slope? I'll take that. We'll simplify it though. So that'd be negative. Remember when we got standard form, your slope is the opposite of A over B. All right, what about the y-intercept? Who can give me that? Gray? -2 is correct. Y-intercept is C over B. So in this case, I'd have -12 over 6, which is -2. All right, Robert. Solid line or dotted line? Dotted line's correct. We know it's a dotted line because there is no line under our inequality symbol. All right, who can tell me, is that shaded above or below? Chastity? Below. It's less than. We got the pointy part going towards the Y. We're going to shade below. Okay? Any questions on that? Standard form just makes it a little bit trickier because you got to find slope and y-intercept. All right, try this one. All right, Sarah E., what's my slope? We got -7/8. That is correct. All right, and then what is my y-intercept? Sydney? 4 is correct. We got 32 over 8. So that's 4. Ford. What we got? Solid line or dotted line? Solid line's correct. And then are we shaded above or below, Levi? Below is correct. All right, any questions on either of those? All right, let's try again. My slope. Chassis, what's my slope? No. Alexandra? Positive 3/4. It's opposite of A over B. You'd have -6 over -8, which simplifies to a positive 3/4. Y-intercept. Jacob? 3 is correct. That's a positive 3. We got -24 over -8. Solid or dotted line, Sydney? Dotted line's correct. Are we shaded above or below? Mason? No. Alexandra? Yeah, that one is below. Can you tell me why? Yeah. So we got a negative. Oh, we have a negative coefficient for the y. So everybody sees what we're talking about, right? If y has a negative coefficient, we got to flip the inequality sign, okay? And that means we would be shading below. Everybody follow on that? You remember when we solved inequalities, if we divided by a negative, that's what we would need to do. That's basically the same type idea here. If we were solving for y, we would need to divide by a negative, and that would flip our inequality sign. Okay? Everybody good with that? That's where that gets maybe a little bit tricky. Not horrible, just another extra thing to remember on it. So, here's how this works. I got an inequality. We got to match it up. I would always check the line first. That's the easy part. It's a dotted line. We look at the answer choices. All of them are dotted, so that doesn't really help. But sometimes, like I said, that can eliminate some of the answer choices. Then, y-intercept's probably the next easiest. So my y-intercept is right there. That is at positive 4. Again, does not help. All of them have a y-intercept of positive 4. Like I said, though, those are going to be probably the easiest two things. I would still do them first, okay? Then we're shaded below the line, right? Everybody's clear with how that is below, right? Anybody not sure on what I mean by above and below? All right. So since we're below, we need like a less than, or we need to flip. This one would flip, A would flip. That is already less than, C would flip, D is already less than. So again, not helpful. But, like I'm saying, these are the easier ones to do first usually, okay? They don't always eliminate answer choices, but they can. So then the next thing we got to do is we got to go to slope. So slope, remember, we got to use points that go through corners. So I got a point there, and slope is rise over run. So I got my rise, I got my run, and that's going down, so that's a negative. So my slope needs to be a negative 3/4. So we got to find the one that has a negative 3/4. With standard form, slope is opposite of A over B. So the top number's got to be smaller. Right there, we eliminate C and D. Then we need the negative 3/4. If I do opposite of A over B for B here, that would be positive. A is the one that would end up as a negative. We got negative 6 over negative 8, but we got to do opposite of A, so that becomes positive 6 over negative 8, which would simplify to negative 3/4. Okay? Everybody kind of follow how that would go, though? I mean, I set this one up on purpose to like make it so the easy ones don't work right away, but I would still recommend going in that order each time. But, you know, do whatever you feel is easiest first. Same type idea, right? Dotted solid is definitely easiest. All right, so let's look at this. We got to know if we are going to flip the line or not, or flip the inequality sign, I mean. So let's look through this real quick. First one here, am I flipping the inequality sign? Who could tell me? Forward? No, why not? Yeah, there's no negative on our y, so we don't flip it. Second one, Tariah. Sydney? No. Why not, Sydney? There's no negative on our y, so that's what we're looking at. All right, third one, Lenny. No, why not? Yeah, we don't have a negative y. That negative on the x does not matter. Next one, Kyle. No. Last one in this column, Robert. Why yes? Yeah, we got negative y, so that one's a yes. All right, middle column there. Olivia, top one. Why yes? Yeah, so that one's going to be a yes. Second one, Levi. Why not? Yeah, the negative, or there's no negative on the y, so that one's a no. Next one, Chassis. Why yeah? Yeah, we got negative y, so we're going to go ahead and flip that one. Next one, Kari. No, we got positive y, so that one's a no. Last one on that column, Jayla. No's correct. Last column there, Robert. Yeah, we're flipping that one. We got negative y. Second one there, Levi. You are Levi. Yeah, the net y is positive, so that one's still a no. Third one there, Alexandra. Kyle. Yeah, that's a yeah. Why, Kyle? Yeah, the negative y coefficient means we got to flip that one. Next one. Olivia. Yeah, that's a no. No negative on the y. And last one. Pedro. No, it's the coefficient we're looking at, not the number. So that one's a no. All right, that makes sense to everybody. Everybody kind of follows. You look at the coefficient for the y. You'll notice, based on all these examples, most of the time you do not flip it, right? Every so often you do, though, so you got to be careful for that. They will try to trick you by throwing one in there sometimes, okay? Everybody good there? All right, so when we have a system of inequalities, we're going to have two lines. They're going to make like a X at some point, some angle. They'll cross, okay? One of those lines will be shaded one way, another one will be shaded another way. And what that works out to, like if I'm shaded below the line with the positive slope, and I'm shaded above the line with the negative slope, y'all see how section 2 is doubled up? Section 2 is where our answers are then. So where they double up, that's where the answers or the solutions are, okay? So if we have section 1, for it to be section 1, we have to have the positive line has to be shaded above, like y greater than. That's after you do any flipping, okay? And the negative slope has to be greater as well. So look, if I do the positive slope greater, see I'm shading up there. The one with the negative slope greater, I'm shading right here. Y'all see how it's doubled up on number 1, right? So if we're above both of those lines, that's what that means. Okay? Everybody following with how this is working? So section 2, what that means, the positive slope, we have to be less than. We have to be shaded below. And the negative slope is shaded above. So my positive line, I'm shaded below. My negative line, I'm shaded above. And again, we see how it doubles up there, right? Y'all see, there's not a whole lot of math we're doing with this problem or the stuff like this. It's just figuring out where it's crossing, okay? So section 3, the positive slope we got to be below, the negative slope we got to be below. So if it's in the very bottom of our X like that, everything's got to be below. Y'all are kind of seeing how this works without me coloring each time, right? I know my coloring was very good and pretty, but you know. Section 4, we got to be above. So section 4, we got to be above the positive and below the negative. Everybody good with that? Everybody kind of follow what I'm saying, right? All right, so look, inequality here. We'll just start with one of these. Y'all go ahead and find the answer, okay? Hey, it probably wasn't clear on your picture. That is a dotted line, okay? Or it's supposed to be. Hey, a little bit of a hint with this one. The actual slope itself does not matter. Just whether it's a positive or negative slope. Who thinks I got it? Chassis? It is not. Levi? D is correct. All right, so here's how this works. Y'all, are we shaded above or below the line? Below. So since we are shaded below, this one has a negative y. We need to flip it. That's still below. B, we got a negative y. We would have to flip it. So can't be that. That'd be above. C is above. Y'all see how that eliminated two choices right there, just whether we're above or below the line. Then really what we're looking for is our slope. Our slope is negative, so we need a negative slope. Slope is opposite of A over B. If I do that here, I'm going to have negative over a negative. That's a positive. D is the one that has the negative. Okay? Everybody kind of follow on that? Like I said, do the easy stuff first. It makes things go smoother usually. All right, so let's try again. This one is slope-intercept form, probably a little bit easier. Everyone got it? Sarah E? B is correct. All right, so here's how this is working. We got a solid line. That doesn't help anything. They're all solid. But we are shaded above that line, okay? Since we're shaded above the line, we need greater than or equal to, or it would have to flip, but none of these flip because all the y's are positive. Then, is our slope positive or negative? Negative. B is the one that has the negative slope. Okay? All right, so let's make it a little tougher. Only a little, though. Because watch. I've got two dotted lines. All of mine have inequalities that would have dotted lines, so that doesn't help. I've got a positive slope. I've got a negative slope, right? So when we had our sections numbered, that was section 4, right? Our positive slope, this line here, to get that section has to be shaded above. So our positive slope has to be shaded above. This is our positive slope, that's shaded below. Positive slope shaded above, positive slope shaded above, positive slope shaded below. So we can eliminate two answer choices right there. This is my negative slope, right? Negative slope has to be shaded below to get right there. So negative slope, well, that one we already crossed out, but that one's shaded above. This one is shaded below. This one's shaded above. This one's shaded below. We need a below. That makes B our correct answer. Okay? Everybody see how that worked, though? I just take whether the slope was shaded above or below the positive or the negative. If you use the little table we made, it kind of shows you based on which section was labeled as well. So again, we got section 4 from our little chart is shaded in. This time, I've got a solid line right here, and it's shaded below the solid line. So my solid line, that's going to be below. Solid line, that's going to be below. We got to flip that one, solid line below. We got to flip that one, solid line below. So that doesn't help. My dotted line, I'm not going to draw it with dots, but that's the dotted line, the positive slope there. So that has to be shaded above the dotted line. Well, above the dotted line, this one would have to flip. That's not above then. This one would have to flip, that is above. This would have to flip, that's below. This would have to flip, that's above. All right, so I narrowed it down to B and D. So here's the big difference between B and D. Or what do you notice is different between B and D? Yeah, so we got a plus and a minus, we got a minus and a minus. So what that's going to affect is the slope for that first equation, right? So my solid line, if I do the slope, I do opposite of A over B. So opposite of A is -6 over B. That means my slope is -6. Y'all, that's a negative slope, right? Down here, opposite of A over B is a negative over negative. That's a positive. D is out. B is the correct answer. All right, we kind of got to like go through a couple steps on this, but we're not having to calculate anything really super difficult other than the slope. All right, and the slope shouldn't be difficult to do. Just remember, opposite A over B, right? All right, try this one. Robert, you got it? C is correct. All right, our section 1, with how I numbered it before, is what's shaded in. That means everything's got to be above. We got to be above the negative slope. We got to be above the positive slope. So if we look, this one here Our dotted line, we'd have to flip that around. It'd be below the dotted line. A is out. We have to flip that. That's above. That's above. So that's a possibility. C, we got above. We flip that around. That's above. So that's a possibility. This one we got below and below. So D is out. So now it comes down to those two. So there's a couple things you can do. There's a few things that are different. I'm looking at the y-intercept. So for my solid line here, if I do the y-intercept for the solid line, my y-intercept's there at +1, right? Y-intercept is C over B. C over B, that's -1. C over B, that's +1. That's how we get C and not B. There are other things you could do by comparing the slopes and things like that as well that would work too. Okay? Any questions there? All right, so this line with the positive slope, that was a dotted line. So let's give this one a try. Sydney, what you got? No. Chastity? Yeah. So C is going to be our correct answer, okay? If you look, each one of these, those parts don't change, do they? So what we have for the top one each time that I highlighted in red, that would be opposite of A over B to find the slope. So that would be -5 over 5. That's going to make the slope for the top one negative, okay? For the one I highlighted in green, opposite of A over B would be -2 over -3. That's going to make it positive. So the green one is positive, the red one is negative. Well, our dotted line is the one that is positive, right? Dotted line has the positive slope. So we got positive, negative. That's the dotted line that's positive. So that one's good. This one, it switches where the inequality is. Sometimes they do that to you. Well, that has us shaded above the one that has the negative slope. Well, the negative slope is this one. We are not shaded above. So that one's out. This one here, we got below the one with the negative slope. So that works. But we also got below. The problem with this one is our positive slope is the solid line. So that's how we can eliminate that one. And then when we look into the shading on each of those, we can get rid of A as well. Okay? All right, so the one other thing we got to do with these is find the different solutions. So here's how this works. point, you look at where the point's at. So -5, or sorry, -4, +5, -4, +5 puts A right there. A would be a correct answer. It's in the shaded part. -5, -1, -5, -1 is right there on the line. B does not work because that's a dotted line. If it was a solid line, that would be okay. C, 5, -5, 5, -5, same type idea, right on the line. -3, -5, -3, -5, way down here. That one should be obvious how that one doesn't work, right? So anything in a shaded region is a solution. We look at this one, same idea. This time we just got the shaded region over here. So 2, 3 doesn't work. It's not in the shaded region. 2, -2, same idea. Those are both right on the lines, but that's not what we would look for in inequalities. 1, 1, right where they cross, doesn't work because one of those is a dotted line. -2, 2, puts it over here. That one's good. Everybody kind of follow on that? If it asks for which one's a solution, you got to find the one that goes in the shaded part. These get a little trickier. If you have Desmos, put them into Desmos. Graph them for you. Today I don't have you on Desmos though, so what we do, we plug in the numbers and see which ones makes it true. So if I plug in -2 for X and -4 for Y, I've got -6 after I multiply, minus -4, and it's got to be greater than -1 for the first inequality. Well, -6 minus -4, we do same change, that's -2. That one doesn't work then. So you just got to plug them in until you find the one that works, okay? If I do this one here, I plug in -2 and -1. -2 times 3 makes -6, minus -1, got to be greater than -1. Same change, that's -5, not greater than -1. We plug in 1 and 2. So we got 3 times 1 is 3, minus 2, got to be greater than -1. 3 minus 2 is 1, that's greater than -1. So it works for the first inequality. If it works for the first one, then guess what? We got to try it for the second one also. So 1 minus 2 times 2 is 4. Has to be greater than 4. 1 minus 4 is -3. That's not greater than 4, so that one's out. Obviously, D is going to be our correct answer. But just to show, if we plug those in, 3 times 2 is 6, minus -4. That's going to be +10. If I got 2 minus, well, 2 times -4 would make -8. 2 minus -8 also makes +10, which is greater than 4, so that's why that one works. Okay? We'll do more like those later this week, though.